Breaking news tonight. Something very serious and unusual has just happened in Washington, D.C. Events are unfolding that could shake the foundation of the American government. Over the last few hours, several high-level officials inside the White House have suddenly resigned. These officials did not leave quietly or for routine reasons. They stepped down together in a strong act of protest against President Donald J. Trump. President Trump is refusing to step down or cooperate with growing legal and political pressure. This is not just another moment of controversy. What is happening now looks like a major collapse inside the executive branch of government. The situation is developing fast and could push the country into a period of chaos that has never been seen before. At the center of this crisis is President Trump's refusal to follow a Supreme Court ruling issued earlier today. The ruling ordered him to give up certain executive privileges connected to ongoing investigations. These investigations involve election interference and the handling of classified documents from past campaigns. Instead of complying, Trump rejected the decision outright. This refusal triggered an emergency response inside the White House. Late last night, senior officials gathered in a closed-door meeting inside the Situation Room. After intense discussion, several top officials decided they could no longer continue serving under the president. Multiple sources close to the administration confirmed that the decision was coordinated and deliberate. These resignations were not from junior staff members. They included some of the most powerful figures in the administration. Among them were the White House Chief of Staff, the National Security Advisor, and multiple deputy secretaries from key departments such as Defense and Homeland Security. Their resignation letters were quickly leaked to major news outlets. In those letters, the officials explained their reasons clearly. They said they could not support a president who refused to follow the rule of law. Many wrote that staying in their roles would make them complicit in actions they believe violate the Constitution. One especially strong letter from the acting attorney general warned that the president's behavior threatens national security and damages the institutions meant to protect the country. This kind of mass resignation is extremely rare. It usually only happens when confidence in the executive branch has completely collapsed. What began as political disagreement has now turned into an institutional breakdown. Officials who once tried to manage Trump's leadership style are no longer willing to compromise or look the other way. Sources inside Washington say this coordinated exit was planned over the past week. Senior staff reportedly made repeated attempts to convince the president to reconsider his position. When those efforts failed, they decided resignation was the only remaining option. At the same time, signs of trouble are appearing inside the Republican Party itself. Many longtime allies are no longer publicly defending Trump. Key Republican leaders, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Mike Johnson, have remained silent. Their offices released only short no-comment statements, which many see as a clear signal of concern. Behind closed doors, party leaders are said to be panicking. They are rushing to distance themselves from the growing fallout. Public loyalty to Trump, once a defining feature of the party, is fading. Lawmakers are quietly canceling joint appearances, stepping back from endorsements, and avoiding public association with the president. The political message is clear. Many Republicans believe a major collapse is coming. They fear it could badly damage the party in the upcoming midterm elections and beyond. One anonymous senator reportedly said that survival now depends on cutting ties with Trump rather than standing by him. As the night continues, the legal consequences are already beginning. The mass resignations have activated enforcement mechanisms written into federal law. These include possible contempt charges against the president for refusing to follow court orders. If Trump continues to defy the Supreme Court, more serious actions could follow. These may include arrest warrants, asset seizures, or the freezing of executive accounts. There is also discussion of invoking the 25th Amendment, which allows for the removal of a president who is unable or unwilling to carry out their duties. However, with so many cabinet positions now vacant, that process would be complicated. Congress is responding quickly. Lawmakers are scheduled to reconvene in an emergency session tomorrow. Democrats are preparing articles of impeachment, and some Republicans are quietly signaling they may be open to removal proceedings. Behind the scenes, government institutions are moving with speed and coordination. The goal appears to be containment. Officials want to isolate the president, limit damage to government operations, and prevent the crisis from spreading further. Public defiance from Trump is expected. A late-night statement or social media post is likely, accusing courts and political opponents of corruption and betrayal. His legal team is preparing emergency filings to try to delay or overturn the ruling, though legal experts believe success is unlikely. International reaction has already begun. Allies such as the United Kingdom and Canada have expressed concern about stability in the United States. The struggle is shifting away from political arguments and toward legal enforcement. As morning approaches in Washington, the area around the White House is quiet but tense. Small groups of protesters have begun gathering, demanding accountability. Security barriers are increasing, and law enforcement is preparing for possible unrest if the standoff continues. Inside the White House, sources say President Trump remains inside with a small group of loyal supporters. Offices are empty, phones are unanswered, and the atmosphere is described as tense and uncertain. As more details emerge, the depth of the crisis inside the Republican Party becomes clearer. Lawmakers who once strongly defended President Trump are now stepping back. The party is visibly splitting. Reports from Capitol Hill say that several senior Republican senators secretly met late last night to discuss plans for a future without Trump. This meeting was not about loyalty. It was about survival. One Republican involved in the meeting said the goal was to protect the party from total collapse. They fear that staying tied to Trump could destroy their chances in future elections. The silence from well-known Trump defenders like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham has been especially noticeable. Their social media accounts, usually active in defending the president, have gone quiet. Private messages and emails obtained by journalists show panic inside Republican leadership. Staff members are discussing ways to distance their bosses from the president. One message from a senior aide reportedly said, "We cannot go down with this ship." When public statements are made, they now focus on respecting the legal process rather than defending Trump directly. This shift has major political consequences. With the 2026 midterm elections approaching, many Republicans believe Trump's influence is fading fast. Party leaders are under pressure to find new leadership or risk losing power across the country. Meanwhile, the legal pressure on President Trump continues to grow. The Supreme Court's ruling against him was decisive, with a 6-3 vote. That decision activated several automatic legal actions. The Justice Department, now led by interim officials who prioritize institutional rules, is preparing to move forward with contempt proceedings. Possible penalties are severe. They could include seizing assets connected to Trump's businesses, freezing campaign funds, or issuing an arrest warrant if he refuses to comply with subpoenas. House Democrats are already drafting impeachment articles focused on obstruction of justice. At the same time, discussions about invoking the 25th Amendment are happening quietly among remaining cabinet members. Legal experts say this situation is extremely dangerous. The president's refusal to obey the courts directly challenges the authority of the judicial system. Once enforcement begins, agencies are legally required to act. This creates a domino effect that could lead to Trump being forcibly removed from office. Federal agencies are preparing behind the scenes. The FBI and Secret Service are reportedly on high alert. Intelligence is being shared with congressional security teams to prevent any unauthorized or extreme actions. Officials believe Trump's power is weakening as more allies leave and support dries up. The government strategy appears to be focused on three things: containment, isolation, and damage control. Officials want to prevent chaos from spreading beyond the executive branch. They are cutting off Trump's access to support networks and ensuring that essential government functions continue. Selective leaks to the media are part of this plan. The resignations are being framed as acts of patriotism rather than betrayal. Authorities are also closely monitoring Trump's movements to prevent escape or escalation. Statements from resigning officials are being documented for possible use in future legal cases. The crisis continues to escalate hour by hour. Advisors say Trump is preparing a national address, possibly using his Truth Social platform. He is expected to claim the situation is a political witch hunt carried out by enemies within the government and his own party. His legal team is filing emergency motions, arguing that executive privilege protects him. However, most legal analysts expect these motions to fail, given the Supreme Court's ruling. Trump may also attempt to issue counterorders telling federal workers to ignore the courts or Congress. So far, many career civil servants are refusing to follow those orders. They cite the law and fear personal legal consequences. This open resistance shows that loyalty to the Constitution is now outweighing loyalty to the president. International concern is growing. European leaders have issued public statements urging calm. Global markets are reacting nervously, with U.S. futures falling and investors pulling back. The crisis is no longer just domestic. It is becoming a global issue. As the day continues, attention is focused on whether more officials will resign. Each departure further weakens Trump's position. Washington is now heavily secured. Barricades line major streets, and armed police are stationed around government buildings. The situation inside Congress is also worsening. What began as quiet concern has turned into open rebellion among some Republican lawmakers. Veteran staffers say they have not seen this level of chaos since the Watergate scandal. The breaking point inside the Senate came early this morning during an emergency closed-door meeting among Republican senators. The meeting was held without warning in an old Senate chamber. According to several people who attended, emotions were high and tempers flared. Many senators who had supported President Trump in the past openly criticized him for refusing to follow the Supreme Court's decision. Senator Susan Collins of Maine was one of the first to speak. She reportedly said that the president's actions had crossed a dangerous line and were now threatening the country itself. Senator Mitt Romney followed, reading parts of a resignation letter from a previous advisory role. He described the standoff as a direct attack on the Constitution and the balance of power. Some of Trump's former allies did not defend him. Senator Josh Hawley, once seen as one of Trump's strongest supporters, stayed mostly silent. Later, he released a short public statement saying that the rule of law must come first, even when it is politically difficult. Senator Lindsey Graham reportedly left the meeting early and has not responded to calls from the White House. Party leaders are now scrambling to prevent a complete public split. However, leaked audio from the meeting reveals intense arguments. Senators accuse Trump of risking the nation's future just to protect himself. Public loyalty to the president has almost completely disappeared. On social media, Republican lawmakers are no longer defending Trump. Instead, they are posting carefully worded messages about respecting the courts and following the Constitution. Fundraising emails and public events no longer include Trump's name. Several lawmakers have quietly canceled joint appearances with Trump allies. The political fallout is growing. 3 House Republicans have already announced they will not run for re-election. They cited the toxic political environment and the ongoing crisis. Many more are expected to follow as lawmakers prepare for a future without Trump's leadership. This political fracture is making the legal crisis worse for the president. With many cabinet-level positions now empty, acting officials must decide whether to follow Trump or the Constitution. The Justice Department, now led by career officials, has formally warned the White House that contempt proceedings will begin within 48 hours unless the president complies with the court order. A federal judge in Washington, D.C., has issued a show cause order. This order demands that President Trump appear personally or explain why he should not be held in contempt. Legal experts say this is almost unheard of for a sitting president. If ignored, it could lead to an arrest warrant. Other emergency legal options are being discussed. These include rarely used federal laws related to executive refusal or incapacity. House Speaker Mike Johnson has scheduled an emergency committee meeting to consider fast-tracking impeachment articles focused on obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Even if impeachment does not immediately remove Trump, it would further isolate him. Each legal step triggers another. Court orders require reporting to Congress, which then forces committees to act. This chain reaction is now unstoppable. There is also concern that Trump may attempt to fire acting officials in large numbers. Constitutional experts warn that such actions could immediately trigger discussions of the 25th Amendment. With so many cabinet vacancies, the process would be difficult, but talks are already happening behind closed doors. Senior military leaders have reportedly briefed members of Congress on continuity of government plans. They emphasize that the chain of command must remain intact no matter how severe the political crisis becomes. The FBI has increased protection for officials who resigned, fearing threats from extremist supporters still loyal to Trump. This fast and coordinated response across government agencies shows a shared belief that Trump's position is weakening. Isolation is taking effect. The strategy now is to contain the crisis within the executive branch and stop it from damaging the rest of the government. Government officials are also working to reassure foreign allies. Emergency briefings have been held with ambassadors to confirm that the United States is still functioning and that international commitments remain in place. As the crisis moves into its second full day, the world is watching closely. Stock markets in Europe and Asia have dropped sharply. U.S. futures suggest a major decline when markets open in New York. Investors are pulling money out of the dollar and moving it into safer currencies.